everyone, to an episode of the Ol'Timers Comic Book Show, the podcast with the best theme song ever. Joining me this time around, dancing in his chair, it is, of course, the Professor.
What's up, Johnny?
What's up? And far from his travels trying to avoid spring baseball, the 13th Crusader returns again.
Greetings, gentlemen.
Boom, boom, boom.
Hello.
Right, so this time around, whose bonkers idea was it to do these?
Not me.
Not me.
We'll list the creators later on.
Oh, will we? We'll point the fingers. All right, so before we get into the books, there's always a little bit of a discussion. We are taking a break from everything that is Marvel and DC, and we are casting our minds back to yesteryear.
Yeah.
The host of properties that have been around in one shape or another through different publishers, right, Professor?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Tons.
Yeah.
Lots licensed properties, and that's what, like, when I was doing my research for the pod was I was impressed by the amount of licensed properties in the 50s and 60s that, you know, since not everybody had a TV back then, there were a lot of properties that ended up on the 4-color page.
Yeah,
So,
and it's 13th. Looking at some of the properties direct. I mean, we're going to talk to a couple. One of them is quite spot on with its TV iteration. One is a million miles away from what you'd expect.
Mm-hmm.
The third one has a bit of a checkered past. I mean, the third one it was at Dell, then it was with Valiant, then it's kind of fell into disrepute a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about comic companies, do you think, that have this property, whatever it may be, it then runs a life, and what makes companies think, I know, why don't we do, and then go again? What is it?
Well, it's all comes down to just basic business principles, right? You got to go with the hottest thing going, and in some cases, it doesn't matter the medium. So back in those years, a lot of people did read books and buy them wherever they could find them.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that couldn't enjoy a television set back then, as Bud pointed out, and even if you had a TV, it probably would have been a black and white TV. But reading the books, they were in color. That's a significant difference, and you can read them over and over again. You don't have to sit there and open up a TV guide and find out if your favorite episode is going to show up 4 months from now.
Yeah, that's true.
I think nostalgia plays a huge part as well.
Yeah,
where everything old becomes new again, and where you would think that, you know, some of these publishers cast off these ideas as old, stale, played, and then it becomes new again with a new publisher, new creators, maybe a new direction, maybe some new ideas, and then it becomes big again. Well, we'll be talking about one of them today that started out, was kind of cast away, and then had a huge second life.
Right. One of the things too, when it comes to comics, it's easier to adapt than it would be a TV series. So you have more flexibility with a book. So to Bud's point, you bring in new ideas, a new artist, maybe a new concept, or just pretty much support pretty much the feel and the aesthetics of the TV show or a book from before. So
it's interesting
to do that.
It's interesting because I think back in the 50s and 60s, comics were a throwaway medium. They weren't meant to be kept. You're like, oh, look, read it, and then off it goes.
Yep.
So some of these books are pretty hard to find. The other aspect of that, of course, is that people are buying the book because it's supposed to look like what they know. And as we said, one of those does this. The first book we're going to take a look at, it's gone through some versions of itself since when it started. And I'm not ever sure it's been massively popular. So maybe someone can clarify that for me. This is going to be Turok, Son of Stone. This is, I'm going to do the Prince thing, you know, when he had his little squiggle going on.
Sure.
This is the book that was latterly known as Turok Dinosaur Hunter. So there you go. So what do we know about Turok? Well, it was written by William Stout Gayford, Dubois, art by Robert. Oh no, sorry, William Stout and Gayford Dubois. Sorry, art by Robert C. Sursa, Rex Mason, and Bob Carrera. there's not a lot of credits for this. This is from what age is this? Anyone
This is
take
from
a guess?
1955.
Yeah, so letters and colors ain't getting a link on this. Sorry, I'm about that.
Might even be 1954.
So you can get this. It's not that an expensive book, to be honest.
They probably all look like that, though.
Yeah, the grade 6 is $424 on Go Collect. There you go.
Yeah.
eBay you can get it for about 300. Again, you've got to check those grades. The grades that we have aren't particularly fantastic on this one, but still. I'm glad that everyone likes Pat Yates because he's got his signature all over that. Well done, Pat. You moron. Whose choice? Bud, this was yours, was it not?
It was. It was. So the reason I picked Turok, Son of Stone is a very nostalgic reason for me. And it's because back in the mid 80s, I took a road trip with my father and my grandfather and my brothers to Pennsylvania to go to a family reunion. And it was the first and last time I ever met my grandfather's side of the family. But on that trip, we stopped at the store and we got a 3-pack of these old comics. And at this point in time, Gold Key was publishing Turok, and was actually published under Whitman Comics. And that's all they were publishing were 3-pack books. They were just, if you remember, you could go into, you still can go in and get 3 books for whatever, $10 now. But that's what I got. We got 3 of these Gold Key books, and I can't remember the other 2, but one of them was Turok. And I remember reading that book and kind of thinking it was pretty cool. I was like, oh, this is like got dinosaurs in it, and it's an American Indian. This is such a weird ass concept. But here, this is the first appearance here of Turok and his brother Andar, and they're off on a hunting patrol, find a cave to go into, and they go down there and end up following the water and end up in this valley where there are dinosaurs, cavemen. It's transported. It's almost like a journey to the center of the earth. That concept.
That's
back
exactly
in
the same concept, isn't it?
Yeah,
Somebody stole that from the comics. God damn you to hell.
But I like the idea here, and they didn't have writing credits in the comic when you actually read it, so good on you for finding that for us. But
Go Collect is what I'm saying to that one. Go Collect was absolutely saved my life on that one. Well done.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, like, they go down into the cave. The writer was influenced by Carlsbad Caverns. He actually said that they were down in Carlsbad Caverns, which was kind of funny because I'm sure Carlsbad hadn't discovered them by this time.
It's the Kawatche Caves for all you Smallville fans.
It was funny, but I like how they try to science you out a little bit with the fish that that's too dark down there, so they don't have eyes, and a little science. They get a little sciencey, and then of course when you start seeing the dinosaurs, they try to be as accurate for the time as they are, as dated as they look now. I'm sure they were trying to be really kind of up on the science of it. But this was, it's a good book. The American Indians. Turok and Andar running into cavemen, and the lack of communication skills they have, but they figure out a way to kind of, give them food. And I just thought it was a fun read. I loved the Dell comics. I don't know if they showed in this issue, but in one of the other issues that I was looking through, they had the notification from Dell Comics about, hey, these comics are great for your kids, and we approve of everything that we create is wholesome and fun family entertainment. So this was really kind of done right around the time that they had the Werther things in the comic book
Right.
and all that stuff.
Deduction. Yeah.
So Dell was really going out of their way to publish family friendly comics. And so Western Publishing, who owned Dell and Gold Key at the time, were they in the 50s were the biggest comic book publishers out there, bigger than DC, bigger than Marvel / Timely / Atlas. They were publishing their top titles sold in the millions of copies every month, and even though Turok was one of the original creations from Dell, they had a large catalog of licensed properties that they were doing westerns and TV shows. You name it, they were publishing it. And
so
Walt
just
Disney,
just to give you a bit of a heads up, because you're absolutely right. You've got things like Animal Comics, Barbie and Ken, Bat Matterson or Matterson. There's a Top Cat book.
Yep.
Calvin the Colonel, Car 54, Where Are You? All these kind of Dracula. There's a Dracula book. Who's them? Tarzan. Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan. Hogan's Heroes. All these, like Lassie. There's a Lassie book. Lasted for 58 issues. That's impressive.
Yep.
The Lone Ranger, 145.
Yep.
I'm just having a look down the list now. Mission Impossible, 5 issues. Wonder why that didn't run. Obviously, it didn't have Tom Cruise in it at the time.
Maybe the mission was impossible.
Yeah.
But they also had the Flintstones, Uncle Scrooge, Daffy Duck, Bugs Bunny, the Three Stooges, Woody Woodpecker.
Yeah.
Like all those books. When you were a kid, this is where you lived. You lived in these. So for me, the gold keys they're really kind of like the gateway drug, really, weren't they?
Okay.
To
Cool.
Marvel or DC's. So.
It's funny because I was looking at this book, and I was a bit harsh on it when I was reading it the first time. But 13th, we've looked at DC books from around this era, and the art here holds up, if not better, than some of those Hawkman books we looked at. Remember when?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
what
I
are
agree
your
with that
thoughts on?
assessment.
Yeah. Your take on Turok?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. And Bud nailed it right on the head with the historical aspect of this. And I'm actually kind of envious because back in my time, if I was lucky, I would get comics sealed in a plastic, maybe 1 or 2 of them in there. But this is one of the things that not Gold Key, but Dell or the publishers of back then insisted on was to kind of give you more bang for your buck. If you were roaming anywhere, you could probably find us at a gas station, at a grocery store, newsstand, or whatnot. So selling copies by the millions, it just to say that in today's time, it's like unheard of. Like people probably wouldn't believe you today that certain titles would be sold in the millions of copies. But
I wouldn't believe which ones. I mean, Captain Marvel, Shazam was huge for Fawcett Comics.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with the availability of the mediums that were available back then, like TV versus book. If you did not have a TV, or again, if you had one on a black and white TV, chances are it was a shared TV. So if you're a kid, you probably had no choice but to go to this for your entertainment. And it's also in color, so color was appealing.
Yeah.
Now,
that is a good call.
Yeah, with Turok, again, like the color palette here back in those days, they were limited, so they couldn't really do colors like they do today. You really just had a select number of inks that you could use and color to get your presentation going. The artwork in here is pretty smooth. I did have a few chuckles with it. I love the sciencey part of it. I laughed when they're like, "Oh, look, there's bats in a cave." Obviously, who else did I think of? Did these guys discover the bat cave? I started making jokes or whatever. But I think that the bottom line of the story, it is pretty wholesome if you think about it. It kind of teaches you stuff like, hey, if you go into a wacky place, don't just drink the water. It could be poisonous, or there's animals. You're in a different habitat. You got to be aware. You may not be on top of the food chain. Things like that. And when you meet people, don't antagonize them. Just try to show them that you come in peace and things like that. So I like a lot of that there. And then obviously the dinosaurs were bonus in here. And me applying what I know today, I look at this and I'm like, oh, the Savage Land. When they go into a different area of the earth, and all of a sudden it's everything that's prehistoric in there is miraculously preserved, and the ecosystem is pretty much untouched. But it's a good story overall. I could see how back in this day, this would get another issue or appearance. The character certainly would not go away. There was a following for this, and you know, I just think it overall that I liked it. And honestly, I never read this until getting ready for this show. Something I always wanted to dig into, because I did check out the Turok during the Valiant days, the G1, which is the original line of. Yep. So it had a following, and Valiant at that time, you know, they were creating characters and or bringing in characters from the past and giving it a reboot.
I mean, Valiant. Sorry, Professor.
Oh, I was just going to jump into the fact that Turok actually had his own video game back in 1990s, right? And that had a huge following too. That was one of the big first-person shooters of '97.
So I think a lot of those Dell characters and Gorky characters, they got a second win through Valiant for sure. There was things like Magnus Robot Fighter,
right,
Turok, Dr. Solar, Man of the Atom. They were getting kind of revised and rebirthed, I suppose. It's nice to go back to see the originals, though, to actually look back and say, well, you know what? I mean, I was never... Back then, I bought Turok #1, and I didn't rate it much. In fact, my biggest Turok story pretty much goes along the lines of, because I picked up the #1, I'd got there was a trading card with it in the bag, I think. And the comic shop I was going to was like, oh, did you collect cards? I was like, no, not really. He goes, oh, well, what are you doing with the Turok card that you got in the Valiant comic? I was like, oh, I don't know, somewhere. He says, oh, if you bring it, I'll give you 15 quid for it. I was like, okay, there you go.
One thing I want to bring up is that the creators in the 90s that were involved with Valiant coming onto the scene, the creators themselves back then were fans of this character when they were kids.
Yep.
And I think that's what's kept this character alive throughout the years.
It's got to have that connection. I mean, we talked about, Professor, you talked about it's kind of like going back and reminiscing about all the good old days and stuff. But you know, if you've got that affinity for the character, if it's the first character, you know, you've read. I mean, how many books have we picked because it's our first book, and when we reread them now, we're like, why on earth? But we still love them, right? Right?
I tell you, we talked about what my first book, Avengers 246, which is a horrible issue of Avengers, but it was my first one. So I have a soft spot for it, and no one can tell me it's terrible.
Yeah, we can. Yes, we can.
But I don't believe you.
Hold on, but I just sent you a DM on Twitter. It says it's terrible.
That's all right. But sent me the same one about Marvel Team Up 83, so it's fine. All right, before we get into our next book, it's time for one of our adverts. I keep promising Freya to play this one, so I tell you what, let's try something a little bit different. Time for the K-pop.
You missed it. I was dancing in my chair the whole time for that one.
I
Tell you
just
what,
sprained my knee.
yeah, konnichiwa. Check it out, K-pop Cosmos. Everything that is K-pop. You saw the advert, culture, music, fishnets. What more do you want? More fishnets for you. More fishnets, please. All right. This next choice is a bit of an odd one. One, we don't have a comic book. Sorry. Two, we're going to let the 13th Crusader introduce this one with his best voiceover work. 13th, what's this book?
Space Ghost.
Is that it? Is
Yeah.
that all you're going to give us?
The first Space Ghost.
I build you up like that, and you go, yes, Space Ghost. We're not giving it the whole Space Ghost.
I'm sure I will at some point.
Well, go on then. Let's hear it.
Very well, Johnny. Yeah,
Got it?
so, yeah.
All right, here we go. So let me give you some statos on this then before we get into it. We don't have Space Ghost #1 to look at. However, Space Ghost #1 was written by Don R. Christensen with art by Dan Spiegel. There is no real definition to say or reason to believe that that's not these on this book. This book is, or this story that you're looking at here, is from Hanna-Barbera Super TV Heroes #6. To give you some more stats, Space Ghost #1, go collect. I couldn't find it on eBay. Guess how much? Just take a guess.
$10.
Nope. Oh, you're harsh, you aren't you? Nope.
$13.
Nope. At 9.6, you are talking $2,760 for Space Ghost #1. There you go. Space Ghost. I'll admit now that I had a thing for Jan. Other than that, tough. Right, 13, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the first appearance of Space Ghost. And you said you didn't have the first issue. I just sent you the link. Yeah.
You've sent me it. Hold on then. Give me 2 seconds. I shall amend that now. Share screen.
Very good, Johnny.
That's a Fantastic Four. So. There you go. Space.
There you go. Muy bien.
Okay. Muy bien. All right. Fire away.
Yeah, so as a kid, I used to watch the reruns of Space Ghost. So I was fascinated by it with his power bands that could do anything with the press of a button. I was impressed with the spaceship. I was impressed with a lot of things from this as a kid. And it always had like high octane action, in my opinion. And it was from Space Ghost, the cartoons, and soon the comic, where I learned how much I really hate bugs.
What was the book called?
Huh?
The mantis
Yeah,
creatures.
what was he called?
Zorak?
Zorak, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just never liked bugs, and this just pretty much cemented it for me. And I never liked the mantis again until the mantis from the Avengers. So well done, Space Ghost. But yeah, this was just pretty much pure escapism with Space Ghost. You know, it made you think of the future. It made you think what was possible. It made you think of other planets, galaxies, and with it, what I liked with Space Ghost is that there had to be some sort of law and order. So he was a crime fighter, if you will, just trying to maintain the peace from evil aliens. 'Cause back in this era, almost every alien was evil or looked like a bug, so it kind of worked together. And I don't know, it's just pure escapism. It brought back a lot of memories for me as a kid. I did take in a couple of Space Ghost episodes after reading the comic, and I just had a good time. And one day I did find a copy of this very book that we're looking at now.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, I found this in the wild. I never expected to see this.
Did you buy it?
Of course. Of course. I think I actually sent you guys pictures of it in our private chat. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't the best condition, and nor would I expect it to be to find it in the wild, especially unslabbed. But I was like, I have to get this because there's only one time a character can appear for the first time in a comic book. So why not? So I have it. It's not in great condition, but I have it sealed somewhere in my collection. But you know,
I
I
assume I'm sure it costs more than 13 credits.
yeah, it did. It did. I do know one vendor who's a good friend of mine that his collection is pretty much Dell or Gold Key,
Hmm.
and he offered to sell some of his collection to me because I also had an affinity for Solar Man of the Atom, and I just
Hmm.
didn't like the price point. But it's one of those things that you think about now, and you're like, should I have done it? Because finding these comic books out in the wild are becoming harder and harder by the day.
Hmm.
Right.
And these properties like Hanna-Barbera just owned cartoons for the number of years that they were out. And
Yeah.
it's not just with the Space Ghost property.
Yeah.
Space Ghost has been revived here and there, even as a parody, like Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I enjoyed it just
Love
because
Coast to Coast.
they
Love
gave
it.
a humorous side to him, right? Because in a TV show, he's always serious.
Mm.
So I loved it. I loved everything that had to do with Space Ghost. And of course, years later in '05, Alex Ross had tipped his hat into doing Space Ghost for DC in a miniseries, which gave it kind of a more of a today look, if you will. But this is where it all started, and these stories are pretty basic.
Hmm.
Again, it's basically Space Ghost doing what he can to protect the universe, and you see the first appearance of Zorak, which I like the cartoon version of him
Mm.
more than I did here. This creeped me out, man, because again, I hate bugs. Like you have no idea how much I hate bugs.
And it always made me laugh that Space Ghost would press the same button on his bands and they'd do something different. He had 6 buttons, but he'd always press the one in the middle on his right arm, and it'd be freeze blast, it'd be heat blast, it'd be this. Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, if we were to do versus battles, I think he'd win more than half of them just with the bands alone. My bad joke for the day. But one of the things that kind of threw me off was just his ability to concentrate and focus on matter to energy. And I think the book does a really good job
Mm.
doing that here, where he had a teacher and he had a mission, and it gives you that little sciencey background as well. Even like traveling at the speed of light and things like that. And what I love at the end of the issue too is like there's an article in there that kind of goes into that with Einstein's theories of time traveling or space travel rather.
Mhm.
And I thought that was the theory of relativity to me. Like I could read that all day long, where you could basically travel millions of miles and stay the same age because that's how time is warped and things like it's just again for a book from this era. I absolutely loved it for that, and of course, Space Ghost.
There you go. Yes. I thought mine was better. Just saying.
Damn you,
Um,
Dan. Damn you, Jace.
yeah, that monkey. I hate that
Blip.
monkey. I hate him. I hate that monkey with a passion.
I it,
Uh,
I kind of grew on me that character.
No,
Not
no,
at first, but then after a while, I'm like, okay, whatever.
no. See, this is where things go wrong. There shouldn't in cartoons. There shouldn't be a blip. There shouldn't be a snarf. There shouldn't be Orko. There shouldn't be uh,
A Robin.
any.
Go ahead, say it.
No, 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 no.
He's taking out all the sidekicks.
Anytime there's some cute Yudi from Dungeons and Dragons,
No,
you
Yeah.
can get that's
no,
it.
no Grogu.
No Grogu.
Yeah.
I'm sick. I'm sick to death of the inconsistencies of Grogu. That's a different matter. All right, Professor Space Ghost.
Hey, I loved the cartoon when I was a kid. It was kind of weird because it was like one of those it was Saturday morning or after school when you get home, there's cartoons on, and sometimes Space Ghost was on, but it was really one of those because it was Hanna-Barbera, right? So it was like either this or the Herculoids or something weird, but it was on early. So you had to get up early to make sure you watched it. When I was reading this, what impressed me was how the concept was copied on this. If you look at was it Jason, Jan, and Blip?
Yeah.
That's Zan and Jaina and their Space Monkey Gleep from the Super Friends, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
What?
Grrr.
Yeah,
No
surprise,
way.
surprise, right? I mean,
What?
but yeah, I mean, well, this predated it, right? Because the Superfriends
Oh, this
came out in the
was by,
70s.
by a bucket. Yeah.
No.
I
Yeah.
forgot about them. I'm with you. I love the cartoon, but over here it was so intermittent. It was one of those cartoons that would be used to fill the space when scheduled programming
Yep.
fell down. So you'd be there minding your own business on a Sunday afternoon as your parents are trying to watch whatever. Then all of a sudden you'd be like, now an extra feature, Space Ghost. And you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
So you'd never get to see, over here at least. I'd never get to see this in a regular kind of sit down children's hour or a block of TV.
My two picks for this was Space Ghost and Birdman. Absolutely love both of those cartoons.
Are you surprised they never did like a live action Space Ghost?
They should do one
No?
now.
We're working on it now, Professor.
I'm kind of surprised they never did, because I mean, especially when I think they missed the boat when Space Ghost Coast to Coast was on, because he was fairly popular, you know. But that was what, almost 30 years ago now.
It's funny because that was late night TV, wasn't it? That's like late night Friday talk show parody. It's interesting. I'm always. I'd like to know the celebrities that are on Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I'd like to know who was interviewing really, and did they know they were going on Coast to Coast, and get the bits kind of snafu'd up and chopped up into little bits and bobs and stuff. I don't know. But
Yeah, much like I said earlier, I just think that you have to put yourself back in this era where TV wasn't readily available for most kids, and they would do whatever they could, Hanna-Barbera and Friends and other publishers, to get their product out there, and this is how they would do it. And the benefit with a book is that you could get multiple adventures, where with an episode you're really just watching one episode if you're lucky enough to catch it, as the machine just mentioned a few moments ago.
Yeah.
I will say this: the Phantom Cruiser is gorgeous.
Love it. Yeah, I agree, 1,000,000%.
It is gorgeous. One of those ships that you just look at and you think, "Wow, how cool is that?"
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I never cared for Jan or Jace, to be honest, but
Oh.
I can see that at
Jan.
least with this character. I mean, he kind of came out there with a Space Ghost family right off the bat.
Yeah.
So I can, but these kids always got into trouble.
That's what they are there for.
Yeah, they just, you know, the monkey's the smartest one. You know, always avoiding trouble.
What else did you see? I used to see the Inhumanoids a bit.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man and Fantastic Four cartoons. I saw those.
I love the FF cartoon.
Johnny Quest was one of my favorites.
No, we didn't have. We got him later on, but we didn't get him originally. But the FF cartoon used to be absolutely tip top. Yeah, definitely.
No one ever remembers Birdman? Like
I remember Birdman.
No?
Birdman.
Like that.
With his
Space Ghost.
And he had the dog too. That was
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Blue Falcon and Dynamo.
Blue Falcon. That's what I'm thinking.
That's where the action is. None of that Scooby Doo. Give me some Blue Falcon and Dynamo.
Yeah. I remember them.
But were those ever? So I'm blind with this. Were those ever transitioned to comics?
I have no idea.
I'm sure.
Sure.
Should we have they were Hanna-Barbera. That means Gold Key must have published them at some point.
Yeah.
Blue Falcon comic book. Let's have a look. See if Senor Google can help us. Blue Falcon.
Is it too much like Hawkman?
Yeah.
Google's gonna return the search for you as like what?
Yeah, it's like who?
What?
It's Batman Pastiche. There was a comic. It's called Dynamite. Dynamite #1.
How about
is lasted for 43 issues in the 70s. So it came out.
43 issues in the 70s.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Dynamite.
Very impressive.
That is. That's from the handy fellows at Comic Vine. There you go.
Hey, listen, in the 70s, there were some Marvel runs that didn't make it past 25 or even 13 issues.
And who published it? Do we know who published it?
Oh, I'm off now. Sorry,
Oh.
I don't know who put the check. But no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is the benefit of licensed comics, is the fact that they are linked to something. I mean, how long has GI Joe been going for, right?
For ages, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, you've got Transformers, you've got, you know, Aliens, Predator.
Yeah.
All these characters, all these films have got
Star Wars.
franchises. Star Wars, yeah, great one. You know, Star Wars started off at Marvel before getting dumped and then going to Dark Horse and then getting picked up again. So all these things, all these licenses, they carry with them instant recognition. So if you walk into a comic store and you see, oh, I'm going to buy a comic for my kid, and you see Space Ghost there versus some dude with a scary cowl and big ears and a cape, you're like, oh, I'll buy Space Ghost. I know what that is. And there you go, you're done. Yeah, that's kind of how it works.
If you're a mom or a dad buying something for your kid and you see something cartoonish, you're gonna want to get that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. That day I bought the copy of the Space Ghost, I felt like a piece of history came home with me, because you just don't see this every day. In fact, I've never seen this book at any convention I've been to, and I've been to numerous conventions. So you just don't see this all the time, as I mentioned. So I'm glad I own it. I felt like I had to buy it.
Well, it's well, you know, you had to. You know, that's why you're a geek. Sorry, it's just the way it works. It's the price you pay. You know, you like comics, so therefore you must buy this. Unlike I'll tell you a quick story of this book. This was my last choice, or my choice, I should say. And the way this worked is, I saw a batch of these in a comic book shop in Darlington way back in the late 80s, just turn of the 90s. And the guy said, you can have, I think it was 4 books. He said, you can have them for 20 quid. I was like, no, I can't, I won't. Got home, rang him, I said, you know what, I'll take them if you just put them on side. He said, nope, they went. And I've kind of lived it ever since. We're talking about the Gold Key Star Trek comic book, written by Dick Wood, by Navio Sakara. Believe it or not, the a grade 5 on eBay is currently £500. That seems quite a lot for a grade 5, right?
I've heard the Gold Key Star Trek series has been skyrocketing in price lately.
Well, I'll tell you now that the 9.6 according to Gold Collect is $45,600.
I am not surprised. Not surprised at all.
Wow.
Not surprised.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And what I found really interesting is it's for a lot for a book that pays the minimest of lip service to its actual forebearer, to its progenitor. Because when you look at this book, there's not a lot of Star Trek going on. Mm-hmm. It's a space, and you can see the Enterprise, but it does crazy things. It flies into an atmosphere. You only do that once in the TV show. The ship doesn't look like the ship. There's no instruments. Characters kind of look like who they're supposed to look like. You can see who Spock is because of his ears, of course.
It's super inconsistent.
Definitely. And you read through, and it's not just the art that looks odd or a bit wonky, but it's the some of the script. They have a teleportation chamber as opposed to a teleport room, or it's the morals are high and loose. Star Trek in the day was always seen to be this moralistic, high valued, we've got to do what's right type of thing before setting your faces on to kill and shooting everybody. This misses out the preachy bit and just goes straight to killing people. This particular issue, there's a planet full of carnivores, carnivore plants, and the solution: blow the planet up practically. It's a crazy story. Good to see Janice in there. Janice doesn't get a lot of love. Some of the art does look like who they're supposed to, so you can get away with it every now and again. But it is, for me, I don't know how you guys think. It's kind of like a side culture thing more than an actual real thing. You know what I'm saying? Because we say it all the time, it's of its time, but this is kind of like, this book was produced before the show was even out there. So all the artists I had to work with was set photos and stuff like that. It wasn't until later in the run that they were able to make things look like they were supposed to. But still massively popular. You know, Star Trek was a phenomenon back in the day. Still is now to some extent.
When was this published?
This book was Star Trek #1 was out 67, July 67.
Okay, so not too much longer after the show aired. Okay.
Yeah. So there's, you know, so of course, you know, bear in mind it takes time to create these things. I enjoyed it for the kind of kitshness of it all. And I would say for anybody who is into this sort of thing and you think to yourself, oh my God, I can't afford that book. In the UK, you can get these. I don't know if you guys can see this. This is the a company called Eagle Moss do collections every year. This is the Star Trek collection. You buy like 52 books or 12 books, whatever. It reprints the IDW stuff, but at the back, you get a gold key reprint as well. So you know what? These probably, you can pick these up for about £5 in comic book shops and bargain bins now. So if you get a chance, you know, have a cut, get them. You know, there's some IDW stuff, but if you like the gold key stuff, it's probably the cheapest, best way to get it, at least in the UK. I don't know if you guys have Eagle Moss over there.
No, I don't know.
No, they don't do hardback publications like that.
I ain't seen it.
Yeah, well, don't have brown sauce either. Oh my God, it's sacrilege. All right, so this is a different type of sci-fi, Professor, different from Space Ghost because it doesn't adhere so strictly to its rules of its TV show.
Yeah, but you know what it adheres to is the idea of the sci-fi comics back in the 60s, the Silver Age, early Silver Age. This reminds me way more of those type of books of straight sci-fi comic than even Star Trek. It was not even, it wasn't trying so hard to be Star Trek. It was trying hard to be a science fiction book with weird landscapes and animals and plants and you know, I mean, they're not even in uniform and this and that would never happen these days, right? And like I was looking even the first couple of pages, I was like, Dr. McCoy's supposed to be wearing the same color shirt Spock is, and he's not. So I can't even tell that's Dr. McCoy unless someone actually drew him to look like Forrest Kelly. So
even says the word.
Dr. McCoy. Yeah, unless they call him Dr. McCoy, right? Yeah. So I had a lot of trouble picking out who Kirk was supposed to be in this book. Spock was the easiest one. But you know, I didn't I wasn't really too concerned about the characters in the book, even though I kind of thought I should be, you know, because I was like, which, you know, where's Sulu, where's Chekhov, where's Scotty? They're not in this, right? So or at least they're not identified. But
yeah, true.
But the whole thing as a whole, it just kind of lends credence to the fact that Star Trek works in most mediums. You know, you just do, you could do movie, TV show, books, comics. It just works. So, yeah, it was a fun read.
Cool. Good read. We've taken this from a collection of, so there are further issues in here. Some of them are absolutely kooky, to say the least. Some of them work really well. 13th, were you a Trek fan back in the day?
Yep.
Good answer.
Yeah, no, I was. And I had fun with this book as well. And I kind of looked at it as a storyboard more than anything else.
Well, that's a shout. That is a shout.
For the show versus the show, right? So there's timing between the comic and the show, but we fast forward to now, we know how historical Star Trek has become in our pop culture. So you take it for what it is. And I did have a lot of laughs with this, not in a sinister way, but in a humorous way. So yeah, Bud is absolutely right that sci-fi at this time was the craze. So now you have a crew of futuristic people exploring space and maintaining order, if you will, in certain situations. I started laughing with that guy Hunt of the exploration team, where he gets turned into a tree,
Yeah.
and because of spores of the plant, it's a plant life civilization, and then it's like, oh no, we lost Hunt, and then all you get from Spock is a pity. Hunt was a great spaceman. We'll miss him. Okay, Captain. Then they move on to the next thing. Like, Hunt had no legacy whatsoever, other than what you would give him after reading these pages.
Well, isn't that any ensign red shirt? To be fair,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, truth be told, you've heard the Star Wars Star Trek joke, right?
Yep.
Ensign red shirt and the stormtrooper meet on a planet. The stormtrooper shoots and misses, and Ensign red shirt dies anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I just think that this character in here should get a little bit more of a shout out. I mean, he got turned into a plant, retained some of his intelligence enough to save the crew. That was the last thing that he's ever done with his life. And then he just, okay, that sucks for Hunt, but let's move on.
I think that they've taken the logical aspect of Spock, which, to be fair, I mean, I'm not saying it's great writing. I'm not saying that at all. But that logical aspect of Spock comes to the fore in episodes like Galileo 7.
Right.
Right? So he's always had that logical sense. It's just at this stage of the series, nobody's as arguing with him. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
There's no, damn it, man. The man had a heart, a soul, not like you Vulcan son of a, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah?
Hey, Spock, are you out of your Vulcan mind?
Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a...
Well, yeah, I just like the concept of, I guess that's what I love the most about Star Trek in general, where they would go and explore other planets and they would label them Class M, meaning that they could go and survive and breathe in their atmosphere. But you just don't know what kind of alien life you'd encounter. Yeah. And to have an entire planet filled with intelligent plant life that were literally looking to become an empire, if you will. I thought that concept was interesting, how they herded the crew into trying to get them to be livestock and things like that. So they did a good job to me of explaining the food chain here.
Yeah.
I just think the solution was like, well, Captain, we can't
blow
beat it, so blow it up.
Yeah.
And off we go.
I suppose, I think, next one. What type of planet? Class D for dead. What you've kind of alluded to, 13th, is that you can get away with more in comic books than you could on TV, especially when you talk about 60s TV special effects. You look at Trek now, and it's like, I think I can't watch classic Trek anymore because they don't put it on. It's the one that's re-imaged now with the computer-generated Enterprise and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the traditional one that we knew from the 70s when it was reran loads of times. So when you think about it, in the 60s, every alien had to look like humanoid, right?
Yeah.
And that carried through to Babylon 5 to some extent, and obviously even Groot in Guardians is biped.
This is probably Groot's planet for all we know. No wonder he's like that.
Yeah. I am Groot. You are dead, mate. Sorry. No, so I think this comic lets itself try different things. I mean, if you look through later in the run, there are like planets that are controlled by computers, which is an old staple for sure.
You know what I noticed? There's no comic book authority code on any of these.
Isn't that good?
Yes, and I think so, because would we have seen this planet get completely decimated? Would it have failed the code, if you will?
Yeah, of course it would have. Because it wouldn't have failed. It would have been through because it's not.
Wouldn't even seen
it's not Earth.
Yeah, if it was code now, it wouldn't get through because all the vegetarians would go nuts. Damn it! Plants have rights.
Not only did they kill the plants, but they successfully eradicated any actual mammals or the plants were feeding on. So well done, Captain.
Well done.
I salute you.
Yeah, to boldly go and never go there again. I mean,
you will now be an admiral. Well done.
Yeah, it's funny. I said something today at work this week, something about admirals in Star Trek, and I alluded it to management.
I mean, but don't you just see the humor? Like, these guys are like, oh my God, we're starting to get overrun by plants. Beat me up quickly, Spock. Yeah, I love this issue, man, for that. Compared to the TV show, I could see the fascination with someone reading this and then watching the show and saying, "Oh, that's what the characters are supposed to look like," and then you get hooked on the show.
Yeah. The absurdity of the Gold Key Star Trek is, I think, it's its own reward. You know, it's kind of like, it's just like a side trip. It's like some sort of crazy acid trip or something. I don't know what it is. But there you have it.
And the captain just had a birthday not just a couple days ago, 92 now.
Yeah.
Big
Happy
Bill.
birthday to Mr. Shatner.
Yeah.
Big Bill Shatner. All right, cool. Excellent.
The only member of Star Trek to actually be in space.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Cool. Any more? Are we done? Are we good?
I think we're good.
And there you have it then. 3 up, 3 down. For a different change of pace. We've taken things a little bit strange with Dell and Gold Key, just proving the point that there are older comics out there that aren't just DC Marvel. The world doesn't revolve around, Spider-Man and Batman.
Oh, and just to say, but before we go, Gold Key is coming back, by the way.
I heard that as well.
They have a Kickstarter right now to launch a new book. So,
which book? What book?
Hold on. It's called
Turok, Son of Star Trek.
No, hold on. Where is it?
Star Ghost, Son of Turok.
The book that's on Kickstarter right now is Boris Karloff's Gold Key Mysteries. And it's got the cover is very very old age 50s type stuff. So
a heroine like that.
No, it's not like that.
Yeah.
But apparently it's the first of 4 different Kickstarters coming from Gold for Gold Key. So
there you have it. Gold Key is back with a vengeance. Cool. Professor, thank you so much for spending the time. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
13th?
Of course.
Yeah, excellent. Don't forget to check out UCPM for all your favorite shows, including Professor.
No Price Podcast, all about the MCU, comics, and Disney Plus.
And of course, the sister show, The Definitive Crusade, which was started by that guy down there. It's now hosted by
Space Ghost.
Yeah, Space Ghost had nothing to do with it. Yeah, sorry. Which drops on alternate Tuesdays for everything that is DC orientated. There you go. Cool. Gentlemen, as always, it's been a blast.
Thank you.
Same for Planet KG. Yeah.
Yeah, KG. Yeah, see ya. I've been your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes, and as always, beam me up. Adios.